Have you ever been with a group of friends or in a session somewhere where you were asked to do an activity about getting to know you? And the question came up, who are the 3 people you would want to have dinner with, living or dead? All kinds of names come up, from Einstein to Elvis. And many people bring up the name of someone they love who's died. I, without hesitation, always say my son Patrick, because he holds my heart, and he's been dead for 15 years. And then I always say Jesus, whom I believe does not mind at all being second, because he knows how moms feel about their sons. And I say Jesus, not because I'm a priest and I'm all priesty, but because I'm a person. And, well, imagine having the chance to meet Jesus, the incarnate Jesus in the flesh. Of course, if you actually got to meet Jesus now, he would have a lot of tattoos because my son Pat was a crazy tattoo artist. But think about this. How do you think Jesus would have answered that question? Well, we already know, because he actually arranged it and did it. The answer is Lazarus. Jesus wanted to sit at the dinner table with his friend Lazarus again. And that is exactly where we find him in today's gospel. Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead for this. Now, does that sound trivial for coming to dinner? Not to me. Who would you raise from the dead so that you could sit with them at the table one more time, see their face, touch their hands, give them a hug, and hear their voice? Trivial? But I think not. Physical connection is so powerful. There's faith and there's flesh. Are they separate? When Jesus walked among us, they weren't separate. And when Jesus sits down at the table with his beloved friend whom he raised from the dead, they aren't separate. Touch. It matters. There's so much body going on in today's gospel. Jesus lived full body, right? Fully human, even with his divinity flowing through him. Eating around a table where he could touch Lazarus' hand, put his arm around his shoulder. Bodies. When Mary wiped Jesus' feet with her hair. Bodies. Jesus didn't say, "Don't touch me." The whole room smelled of perfume. And when Judas said it'd be better for us to just write a check, Jesus said, "Let her touch me." The body, then and now. This is where we meet God, in our bodies. They're not dualistically separate from our spiritual life. For the Christian, our daily human interactions are the venue for experiencing and expressing the presence of Christ, the place where we strive to embody Christ for others. That is sacred human work. And I would say that sacred human is not an oxymoron. We talk about being Christ's hands and feet in the world because our interactive world turns on our hands and our feet. We have inherited this intellectual theology of fallen flesh, but when Jesus lived among us in the flesh, his very coming honored the flesh, and in his life among us, he never despised the flesh. Time and again, he healed flesh for us, not for show, but because it mattered. And he raises Lazarus from death to life again in the flesh. Jesus wanted to touch his friend Lazarus' humanity so much that he raised him from the dead. He understood Mary's love and gratitude deeply in her very human touch, anointing his feet and then wiping them with her hair. He loved his disciples in their flesh so much that after the resurrection, he came back in a bodily form. He said to Thomas, "Put your hand in my side, in my body, here and now, in our flesh." This is where we meet Jesus, in our bodies. Why do we often have such a tough time accepting Jesus' embrace of his own humanity and the sacredness of our humanity, and then acting accordingly? Our human relationships, they're sacred. The way we treat each other in our humanity is the way we live out our call as followers of Jesus. Your body is the place where you meet God because you're human. And so it is the place where everyone meets God. War victims and refugees and immigrants and the neighbor that I don't like all that much. Everyone, right? Jesus didn't leave anyone outside the circle of touch. "Leave her alone," he says to Judas. "Let her touch me while we're both in the flesh, because we won't always be. And this time together, it matters." What is happening in our physical world and how we act as Christians in the world of relationships, it not only matters, it is sacred. If an esoteric notion of spirit were all that mattered, if this bodily life were so insignificant to the next, then why Jesus at all? When Jesus opened Lazarus' tomb, it was not just to have his one friend back. He did it for all of us to take heart and to know the depth of his divine and human flourishing, his compassion and solidarity and love for all of us, and his triumph over death, triumph over the death-dealing ways of the world. Because on Easter Sunday, Jesus himself comes out of the tomb for us. And resurrection is transformation. Do you imagine that Lazarus was unchanged by being the man who died and was brought back to life? Imagine being Lazarus. Imagine the things people were asking him. Imagine the people around the table with him. Lazarus. And we're resurrection people too. If we Christians stake our faith on Christ's resurrection, then we must be transformed by it as much as Lazarus. If Jesus vanquishes death, then he does vanquish it for me and for you and for my son and for all of our loved ones who've gone before us. How could we not be changed by that? This is what Jesus walked into for us. We call it Holy Week, which is coming only a week from now. Jesus knew he was headed to his death and to his resurrection. This is transformation time for all of us. Holy Week always is. This year, though, we are walking with Jesus to the cross, shadowed in very dark circumstances in our world. But if Holy Week is again transformation time for us as Christians, if our faith is truly formational and transformational, then we need to live out our call as Christians more faithfully than ever. We grieve in this world, but we don't despair. How do we, in our bodies, live into and live out our faith, our love for the resurrected Jesus, who next week, Holy Week, is for us going to walk through hell to his resurrection? We live out our love by following him, listening to him. It's not separate from our life in the world. It's tied to our actions. I am Christ's hands and feet in the world, and you are Christ's hands and feet in the world. It's not just a trite statement that we say as Christians. Christ doesn't need us to be his Spirit in the world. The Spirit blows as she will all the time, in and through us and around us throughout the world. We recognize and live that Spirit in our bodies and in how we follow Jesus and respect the bodily needs of every human being, especially those that would be wanted by the world to be outcasts. We are called to do what a body can do because of Jesus.